Welcome to another episode of the Voice of Influence podcast. I am your host, Fong Chua, and with me on this journey is the happiest person on earth, my co-host, Ms. Stacy McPherson. On this show, our aim is to break down the barriers of public speaking, allowing you to succeed and become the voice of influence. And today, Stacy, we have an amazing guest.
I am so excited to welcome Junaid. Junaid is powerful. He is amazing. I had the experience of meeting him in Maryland just fairly recently, although we were friends virtually before that. Isn't that right, Junaid?
That's right.
It was an amazing opportunity to meet Junaid. He's so powerful in being able to help people share their message in a way that they wouldn't be able to otherwise, because he helps with the technical aspects of it, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that makes someone really pop virtually on their various platforms. And so I would like to share with you that he has a business called Humble Zone, where he helps you create a space that's so ideal for you to do recording with all of the tech aspects, your sound, your lighting, and everything like that, your background, but then also making it comfortable, making it part of who you are and to represent you. So it's an amazing thing that he's doing. He's also an author, and one of his publications is Mastering iPhone Video Production. And so he also has his own podcast that's been running quite a long time, Hacks and Hobbies. And he's so amazing on his podcast. You have to reach out to him if you're interested in being on his podcast. He also speaks frequently at national events such as Podfest, and he's also been a speaker at many virtual summits. So he is amazing. I really loved meeting him. He's a cyclist, a beekeeper, a podcaster, a designer, an author, a woodworker, a producer, a filmmaker, and the last one, wait for it, an actor. And he's happily married and has 4 children. So I'm happy to introduce you, Junaid.
Hey, Stacy and Fong, thank you so much for that warm intro, that beautiful inspiration. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
We're so glad you're here.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Always nice talking to people who has achieved a lot and also aspire to help other people achieve their goals and dreams, which is something that you do all the time. Now, I have lots of questions, especially with about bees and acting. But I guess our main focus today is about the speaking aspect of things. And for somebody like yourself who's been speaking all around the world, virtually, live, and helping others really get their messages across. Have you always been an amazing speaker? If not, what was your journey towards being a speaker and why?
That's a really great question. And no, I was not always a speaker. In fact, um, back when I was going to college, I took theater class. And when they said that you have to go up on stage, I immediately dropped it because I was so shy.
Oh,
It's hilarious. But as my journey into design, I've been a graphic designer and a web designer and a UX designer for many decades. But I always had a passion for photography and filmmaking. So I'd be taking photos. I'd be the guy with the camera at all of the events and all of the parties and taking photos of people. But I was never really in the photo because, I love the tech. So being a tech savvy person, absolutely loved it. And throughout that journey, as I'm going through it, I run into things like, when you're designing websites, you get influence or you get the exposure of the technologies that are behind it. Setting up the computers, setting up websites, setting up all of the behind the scenes. And I started blogging about this stuff. And as I'm blogging, I start hearing about, oh my God, there's a new thing called the iPod. So I got to, play with the iPod and then the iPhone. And as I'm blogging and as I'm doing all this thing, I hear something about podcasting. Now, it wasn't until 2012 that I stepped into the world of creating podcasts. The first podcast that we launched, it probably lasted about a month with four podcast episodes because I had two co-hosts and we were in different time zones. We didn't have Zoom, right? So, and I was the only person that was pushing to say, "Hey, let's do a podcast together." Fast forward to 2018, I finished listening to this book by Gary Vaynerchuk called "Crushing It," and towards the end of the book, he says, just document your journey, because I was wondering, I was like, hey, if I want to start a podcast, I gotta have a story. I gotta have something to talk about. But he said, no, just document your journey, and that could be your podcast. And that's where the beekeeping came into, because just as I finished listening to the book, I had just finished my beekeeping course as well to become a beekeeper. And I was like, perfect timing. I can talk about my beekeeping on the podcast. And that's where the podcast started. And now, rewind a little bit, back in 2016, I had, as I'm doing all the different things, I've always also been known as somebody who had a lot of different hobbies, because I get really passionate. And in 2016, I joined Toastmasters, and they taught me how to speak properly, how to, be somebody who could stand out there and become this extrovert. So over the past 20 years, I've transitioned from being an introvert to being an extrovert, and loving to speak on stage.
Oh,
Awesome.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that background. And I think that it will resonate with the people who watch this, because many of the people are aspiring to be more comfortable on the stage, to be more comfortable in front of their cameras at home. And so it's so exciting. And I love that advice. Like, just document your journey, document where
Mhm.
you're at, what you're doing. And I think it would have been so interesting to hear about the beekeeping. Like, I should go back to your earlier episodes and, listen to you, because it's so fascinating. I also, there's a bit of a buzz on beekeeping, haha, buzz,
Mhm.
because of the movie The Beekeeper that came out.
Yeah, yeah, it
And so
is.
people are curious. So I love that. Yeah. Would you
100%.
share with us, when you were getting started in public speaking, kind of a funny story or something that happened that was like, oh, not so great, or just something you could share with us with that we'd be interested in?
The very first time I spoke in public was probably 20 years ago. We were going with a group at this correctional facility, and there these all the people that were there, they had converted, or they were Muslims, and I go up there, and I'm this young, 20-some-year-old guy, and I go up there and recite the Quran, and I start translating the Quran, and it felt really weird, and because everybody's just focused and looking at you, and I'm like, should I tell a joke? Like everybody's so serious. I'm like, what's going on? Because I want to, I want to lighten the mood, but I start saying something that I had no idea what I was saying. I was just, trying to motivate them and whatnot, and I basically stepped off the stage after that. But that was really interesting. Like, if I had practice, I have done any practice at all, maybe it would have gone really good. And the reason I say that is because, as a Muslim, we attend, Friday prayers every Friday. And when you're attending the prayers, there's a khatib, or a speaker, that's giving the sermon. And I've seen so many people give really beautiful sermon. I was like, I wonder if I could ever do that, and how do you even get to it? But anyways, that was something that was always in the back of my mind, but I never really connected the dots, or never really got in the community of people who would then invite you to come and speak on stage. But I found my niche in talking about technology, and talking about the things that I love to do, and get to speak about those things.
Oh, love it. Love it.
That is absolutely amazing. Um, I like how you're able to use speaking for all aspects of your hobbies and
Hmm.
your entrepreneurship and your business. Now, there's lots of people out there who goes, you know what? I'm the tech guy. I only focus on the tech guy
Yeah.
stuff, and therefore I don't need to work on my speaking. Or I'm going to focus only on the beekeeping side. That's all I'm going to do. Why do I need to learn how to speak? Why do I need to communicate better? For somebody who's doing it, why do they need to focus a little bit more on the communication side so that it complements all the other aspects? What's the biggest change?
That's a really excellent question. And as you are asking that question, I know these people that you're talking about, right? Because I have communities of people that are just technology aspects, and that's their main job, right? That's the job that brings in the money. That's the job that they do. Everything else that they do is on the side. Like my beekeeper mentor, he has a full-time job, but as a beekeeper, that's his hobby. even though he spends a lot of time in managing the 12 different hives that he has, but he doesn't speak about it. I mean, actually, he is the president of the beekeepers association, so he does speak, but again, you can hear the level of speakermanship that he has versus other people, based on the different words they might use. And it's easier to speak on one subject because you're who your audience is, so it's easier to talk about that. But when I escaped out to say, hey, I want to speak more in public, it's because I have a mission to help people get comfortable in front of the camera, because each one of us have a very unique and different story. We all come from different background, and there's no other person that's the same as you. So when people are ready to build their personal brand, build their uh, foundation of who they are, or leave their legacy, that's where it starts becoming more and more apparent. Hey, I want to learn how to do this. And I think there's what really matters is what stage of your life you're in. Right. When I made the decision, hey, I want to be a podcaster, I made this decision because it was 2018. I was going to turn 42, and 42, as you all know, is the ultimate answer if you read the book, Hiking, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I was like, this is the year that I really need to step into this thing. So, 6 years later, I'm still going, and it's been an amazing journey because I get to meet people like yourself. I met over 600 people that came on my podcast. I got to meet them, hundreds of people that I've met in person at the different events that I went to. So again, it's a personal journey that somebody has to be on to say, hey, this is the route. And it could happen at any age. For example, Stacy, you remember we saw Nick Hutchinson. He's
Yes.
probably in his 30s, and he's running the successful company. So it all comes down to who's your influence, who's around you. Do you have parents that are also entrepreneurs and speakers? Because then you're going to learn to speak at a very early age and be up on stage at a much younger age.
Ah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's so insightful. I've been curious about any time where you had a fear, and you shared with us when you had that joke that you wanted to tell. With any other times where you felt that kind of fear of going on stage and then overcame it? Because that's something that a lot of our listeners struggle with, me included.
Yes, yes, yes. The 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 craziest thing is when you're up on stage, you're probably thinking about what people are thinking about you. But as you tell that story of what you're going through, everybody's inside their minds thinking about how that story resonates with them. So even though you're scared up there on the stage, know that everybody's thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you.
That's so powerful. Oh my gosh, I love it. It's instead of what are they going to think about me, it's what is their experience around me or
Yeah,
interacting with me. What is their experience? So caring about their experience. And then what does that do for your internal state, like for the
yeah,
fear?
exactly.
Totally,
I've
totally. I completely agree with that whole
mm,
thought process because a lot of people are just so busy thinking about what other people are thinking about that
yeah,
it completely psychs them out. Now,
yes,
you talked about the whole addressing the fear aspect, and a lot of that has to do with the comfort level. And one of your expertise is to help people be comfortable in front of camera. What is the difference between being comfortable in front of camera versus being comfortable in front of live people? And how do you navigate through that?
it's the hardest thing is to be comfortable in front of camera because you see your reflection on that computer screen. And when we see that reflection, you're like, oh my God, my room is a mess. You start thinking about all the things that's wrong instead of thinking about what message you're going to deliver. But when you're on stage, you can't really see yourself. You see everybody else and their reaction. So it is a lot more scarier to be on stage, I think. But then it's also not as scary because you don't see yourself. So it's again, different. It's a different experience, but between the two, what's really important is the more you do it, the better you get at it. Did you know that Steve Jobs was not a good speaker at all? He put a lot of time, he put a lot of energy in practicing to deliver that message on stage, his priority. Because if you can deliver that message the right way, you can extract the emotion that you're looking for. In fact, comedians all over the world spend hours and hours workshopping their jokes. They'll perform and they'll just keep workshop. And the more you do it, like, again, the more you learn how to walk, the better you're gonna start walking. The more you run, the better you're gonna run, and the longer you're gonna run. So again, it's all comes down to exercising that muscle of speaking.
Yes, so true. So true. And you have so much experience with your podcast doing it for so many episodes. Yes. And
Yes.
Fong also, like I love it. It's so impressive. I was curious about something you could share with us about a wow moment, either on one of your podcasts or on stage where it was like things just worked well, or you had an amazing guest, or just a wow moment.
Hmm. I was interviewing this lady. She's a PR marketing agent. She's helped several celebrities and helped them market and do PR work for them. And we had all sorts of technical issues during our episode, but we had a really fun time together because we both came from the place of gracefulness. We both came from the place of accepting what's going on and going with the flow. So I think that was a really great episode because we both were laughing through the entire episode. We're both experiencing the experience together as my kids came in and did they want to jump on call and be like, hey, it's me over here. And then, answering them and staying calm throughout the process. I think because when you stay calm throughout, no matter what's going through, you're going to come out on top. So again, it all comes through understanding, hey, we only get better when we make mistakes and then fix them along the way.
Yeah. Nice. Yes, I love it. That's very valuable.
Yeah,
I do have a question, but I want you to go ahead, Fong.
that's totally relatable because everybody could practice and rehearse and go over their presentations and their speeches and all kind of stuff. And it's never perfect. You never know if
Mhm.
something comes up that it's unexpected. You
Yeah.
never know if your cat comes into the door or whatever like that. And it's that calmness that you talked about that allows you to kind of go, you know what? It's okay. It's human.
Hmm.
We're all human. We all learn from our mistakes. Things happen, and you just kind of roll with the flow kind of thing.
Yeah.
One thing that you're really good at is the tech side of things. You hosted your podcast. It's been going on for a long time. Lots of people out there are just looking to start their podcast, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Well, how do I start? What do I need? What do I absolutely have to have before I start my podcast?" So, from a tech side, what do people need to have to start, whether it's minimal or very, very high tech? What's that order that you think is needed?
Well, I'm gonna fall back to how I started, okay? Because when I started my podcast, when I got that idea, oh, I can talk about beekeeping. So I'm gonna tell you a little backstory why beekeeping, right? So 2012, we take my oldest son, he was like almost 2 years old, to this allergist. And the allergist, as we're doing these pin pricks on his back and testing for all the different allergies, we see those bumps, he mentions, hey, local honey is really good for seasonal allergies. So that thing kind of like stuck in my mind. As I'm going through life for the next few years, I I'm also a huge Kickstarter backer, so I've backed over 280 Kickstarter projects. One project that I ran into was called Flow Hive. Now, these two gentlemen in Australia created a really friendly hive uh, to extract honey, and it's basically this plastic structure, and you just switch the gears, and the honey just flows from the top frames. I'm like, wow, they made it so much easier. And then a friend of mine, while I was in Denver, asks to borrow me my GoPro so he can attach it to his hat. And as he's uh, picking off these beehives from this truck, I was like, what do you mean you're getting beehives? Like, yeah, I'm renting beehives for my 10-acre farm. I'm like, wow, you could do that? He's like, yes. They're gonna come in, they're gonna pollinate. And what's funny is, uh, so that was the number three aspect. And that was basically it that enabled me to say, okay, I want to become a beekeeper. Now, 6 months before I took the class, I was watching constantly. We had moved to our house, and tell me if I'm going too long. We moved into the house. We had this huge backyard. I was like, okay, now I can keep bees. So I started watching these videos, and 6 months later, the last video I watched, the guy was like, well, if you really want to become a beekeeper, you need to go join a local beekeepers group. I was like, obviously, that's how you're going to learn how to become a beekeeper. So I go join the beekeepers group. They had an 8-week class. I finished the 8-week class. And as I'm walking with my colleagues, they're like, on your first episode, you should talk about queen bee. I'm like, of course, queen bee, without queen bees, there's no eggs in a beehive. It's like, no, no, queen bee as in Beyonce. I had no idea Beyonce was known as queen bee. So my first episode on the podcast is called Queen Bee, and I apologize to Beyonce, saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were Queen Bee." So when this happened that same day, I jumped in my car and had been researching podcasting for somebody else. I jumped in my car and I discovered this app called Anchor. Now it's known as Podcasters for Spotify. And I turned the recorder on and started recording my first episode in my car as I was driving home. And the first year, I recorded the entire season one, in my car, talking to myself about beekeeping and the different hobbies that I had. So
Wow.
if you, so the key to it, just get started and find the journey that you're on your phone, because you want to reduce the friction as much as possible. Why is it so easy to diet with Huel products that Stacy's doing? Because it's so easy, right? You remove all the friction. Because
Yes.
anytime you have to do a lot more, guess what? You're gonna put it off to the next year.
That is totally awesome. I mean, I could just imagine that first episode. So many people searching that Queen Bee name and jumping onto your podcast. You're like, wow, look at all these listeners on my very
Yeah,
first episode. And at the end, you probably taught a lot of people who had no intention to learn about bees a lot about bees.
that's right.
That's so fun. I love it too. That's great. I was wondering if you could share some tips on how to optimize it. So beginners, they just need to get started, even if it's on their
Yes.
phone and in their car. But then as you get more and more advanced, then what are some tweaks and things that you can share with us how they can improve their setup?
I love that question because just this week I published a book called Seven Stages of Home Studio Evolution, which goes into, hey, you start with your phone, you're the novice, you just get started, you put the reps in. So the next step is, hey, I'm really good at it. I want to make sure my audio is even better. So the first investment that I would say is get a nice microphone, because if people can hear you nice and clear and properly, because again, podcasting is a intimate experience. We're listening to other people in our headphones. It's a one-on-one conversation kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you have a good microphone so people can hear your whispers, right? So when you do that, they're now even more engaged. So that's the number one investment that I would say. Get a good microphone. Now, if you're doing video podcasting, then make sure that you're using a good camera, have good lighting setup, sit in front of a window. And then my book goes deeper into all of the different aspects that you can, start adding, has a list of gears as well.
Oh, so perfect. Your book explains it. So good. Wow, that's awesome. So I generally introduce people with their first names, but just in case it's Junaid Ahmed, and say the title of the book again.
The title of the book is called Seven Stages of Home Studio Evolution. In fact, you can go to homestudiobook.com and it'll take you to the book page.
Ah, very nice. Very nice. And we can link that in the comments when we post. So, so great. Awesome. And then is there any part of the home studio production process that you really like? There's like so many aspects of it. Is there something you kind of get excited about?
I get excited about showing up on camera with other people because we're doing this to make a connection with the other people, with the people in our communities, like podcasters like yourself, or when you're doing virtual speaking, when you're talking to other people, that's when it lights up. I was recently reading this book. I think what was it called? It's called Brain Glue by James I. Bond, and in it they said, they did an experiment. They put these two rats, uh, and they gave them two bottles. One was laced with heroin, the other one was laced with water, with just plain water. And the rat always went to the heroin laced water. And then some experimenter came and looked and was like, you're doing it all wrong. So what he did, he created a kind of like a rat park, a community of rats, and then they put a bunch of rats in there, and they put the two water bottles. Guess which one they all went to? They went to the regular water.
Wow.
Because addiction is not the absence of non addiction or sobriety, it's the absence of communication. So I was like mind blown listening to this. So that's my favorite part when I get to have conversation. And it doesn't matter what type of video quality you have, what type of microphone you have, because as long as you're making those connections, you are growing and you are growing. In fact, my comfort to camera only happened in 2020. We were all locked in pandemic. We were doing daily Zoom calls at 4 p.m. for an hour and a half. And there was like 5, 10 people, and we're just talking about how we're feeling because we wanted that human connection. We couldn't do that in person anymore. That's what helped me grow into becoming a better speaker than I was before when I tried to do my course and I couldn't get a word out.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a great story. And it's great to hear the beginnings of things and how things kind of started because there's lots of people out there who's totally overthinking how they should start.
Mm-hmm.
And something that resonates really a lot with me is that when you're giving your story, it's like just go and do it and then improve as you go.
Yes.
Similar to you, I didn't start my podcast until I had everything. I just started it. And then,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I think I can afford that light now. And then, okay, I think I
Yes.
can afford that microphone. And you kind of grow it like that. And then all of a sudden, you're at the space where you have all the stuff that you kind of need. Now,
100%.
there's people out there who are in the entrepreneurial space who wants to grow and become a better speaker so they could become that expertise in their field. There's
Mm-hmm.
also another group that are just so shy to even speak out. They just want to be more involved in their company meetings
Yeah.
or client meetings and all that kind of stuff. What would you say to that group to just
Mm.
get comfortable with their voice and speaking out?
Well, that's a really good point and a good differentiation that you're sharing because one group of people are, they're already entrepreneurs, they're already out there and they know exactly what they need to do because they see everybody else doing it. Now, the person who is an entrepreneur, but they're inside a company, but they still have the entrepreneurial spirit. So they have the desire. And when you have the desire, you're gonna find ways to get that practice in. I think a really powerful aspect of it is again, find the community of Toastmasters because they're going to encourage you how to speak better. In fact, a lot of companies, in fact, I joined Toastmasters inside a company that I was working for. So this is the room that I worked in, and this is the room that they had weekly Toastmaster meetings. And I was like in close proximity. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go uh, to these meetings every other. It was every week. So 2 weeks it was Tuesdays. The other 2 weeks was Wednesday. So it's funny how I still remember. So find a community of people that are going to encourage you, because a lot of the times you're not getting the encouragement. We get put down.
Mm.
We give up as soon as something fails. So if you're around people that are going to encourage you um and what's that, celebrate you, celebrate your wins, celebrate your failures, that's where you want to be in, because then you want to do more of it.
Awesome. Happy to speak with our fellow Toastmaster.
Absolutely.
Yes, and another place they can go is the Voice of Influence.
That's right.
Because we have an 8-week course that starts on the first Thursday of September, and we've been running this. This is another session that we're going to be doing, and we're so excited. Fong and I are co-hosting it, so it's an option, and
Love
it's
that.
completely virtual, so people can attend and get 8 weeks of amazing action-packed training, hands-on experience with public speaking, as well as that community that you talked about, that sense of community. It's so powerful.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps up our formal portion of the interview. Is there any final words, thoughts, advice, tips about speaking in general that you would like to still share?
You know, I encourage my kids all the time to, speak and tell us, hey, what's going on? How was your day? And give us like a rundown. So try to see if you can do that with the people that are around you, and see if they can find, if they can encourage. So again, more practice, and then you start tweaking. And if you don't have people listening to you, or doing that kind of thing, just record yourself on video and see how are you doing. Are you really rigid and sad? Are you happy? Like, what is that happening, and how can you then turn it up? You know,
Mhm.
um, I'm going to give you examples of Steph Curry, who would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning before the practice, and he would show up in court to make those 3-pointers. And he did that because he wanted to get better. So you have to do the extra work if you want to get better. Uh, it was Kobe Bryant who said he got 4 workouts or 4 sessions out in one day, as opposed to other people who were getting only 2 sessions out. Now, what's that going to do in 2 years' time? You're already 4 years ahead in training than other people. So just one additional element is going to put you so much far forward than your competitors. So just get out there and do the work.
And I love how you started off with something very, very simple. Just ask your kids what's up, what's going on in
Mhm.
your lives. And
Yeah,
it's even as simple as saying hello or thank you to somebody walking by. And it just goes a long way if you're so cognizant of speaking out and branching out from there. So
100%.
that is our formal portion. I got 5 quick rapid fire things for you to answer. Give me the first thing
Yes,
that
sir.
comes to mind.
Okay.
All right. Now you get an opportunity to speak on stage with anybody you want. You're sharing the stage with them. Who is that person you would love to share the stage speaking with?
Man, I would love to share the stage with Pat Flynn.
Awesome. Now you get an opportunity to interview a fictional character. It could be a cartoon character, it could be a superhero, it could be a fake person, whatever it is. Who would be that fictional character you would love to interview?
Maybe Tony Stark.
I kind of figured you're gonna go that route.
All
Do you have,
right.
aside from the beekeeping, the carpentry, all that stuff that we listed out at the beginning, what other hidden talent that not many people know about?
Well, you did mention some acting. I haven't really done a whole bunch of acting, just a few roles here and there. But I'm really flexible, and I can touch my the back of my palm to the ground with my toes.
I'm trying to visualize that.
Say it again. Touch the
It's
back of
like
your
I
palm.
can so you know how most people can touch their fingertips to the ground while they're standing, like
Oh, like
standing
flat
there.
hands
Yeah,
on
flat
the
hands on the ground.
ground. Ah, very
Ah,
good.
I'm that person who's only the tip of my fingers.
Okay.
You're being introduced on stage. what is your intro music? What song?
Oh my God. Holy Um, it would be "Come With Me" by I think it's Puff Daddy. Can't remember. The song was in the first Godzilla movie when Matthew Broderick was in it. Can't remember the name of it right now, but I listened to it almost all the time.
Awesome.
Oh,
And I'm sure we'll find it.
Yeah,
Last question is, well, before you get there, give me a number from 1 to 4.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, you want to pick this 4 or this 4?
One on the bottom.
This one? Tell me something about straw.
Straw is a powerful uh straw is a powerful element to be used for horses. It's hay for horses.
that's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you
I would
very much.
Can I say one thing about straw? So if you are practicing diaphragmatic breathing, which is the best kind of breathing for when you're on the stage, if you put a straw in your mouth and only that your oxygen has to come through that straw, you instantly go into a diaphragmatic breathing.
Wow, that's awesome.
They knew.
Yeah, the song is called "Come With Me" by Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page.
Awesome stuff.
Very cool.
Thank you very much, Junaid. Stacy,
Thank you so
anything else
much.
from you?
No, thank you so much, Junaid. This was such a blast. You're awesome.
Oh, absolutely. This was a blast for me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Junaid, for being on the show. Everybody, make sure you connect with Junaid. Obviously, he has the expertise not only in the speaking aspect, but the tech side of things as well. And then, of course, if you want to learn more about bees and carpentry and acting, he's your guy too. So, thank you. Very talented individual and so much expertise. So, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Fong. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Awesome. And everybody remember, when you speak with confidence, you have the voice of influence. We'll see you later.